Hi, the presentation you're about to see is a presentation on Digital's open system strategy. It's a presentation that's designed for salespeople to try to clarify and explain what our messages are surrounding the open systems topic. It's not a presentation that is designed for customers, and you can tell that by my attire and the luxurious studio accommodations that we have here. If you do want a copy of the slides for your own purposes to learn the messages so that you can deliver the messages associated with the presentation to your customer, stay tuned at the end of the film and you'll be able to see how you can get a copy of this from a public directory. We are working on a customer version of the open systems message which delivers a lot of the same ideas but does it in a form that is a little bit more customer oriented than some of the things you'll see in these slides here. So again, the presentation is designed for you, the field people, to understand our open systems messages, and we'll be delivering to you in a very near time frame a customer version of this presentation. Thanks and enjoy the tape. I'd like to talk to you today about delivering open systems and multi-vendor integration, a presentation that we have that talks about our open system strategy as a company. I'd like to cover three main topics during the course of the conversation. The first is why open systems? Why should we be interested in this? And why are our customers asking for them? And once we understand that, I'd like to move on and talk about what open systems actually are. And I think you'll find that we have a definition which is different than some of our competitors do, but in line with what most of our customers are asking for. And then we'd like to talk finally about how Digital is delivering open systems and the directions in which we're headed in terms of making open systems a reality. As a vendor, I would say, where did the demand for open systems come from? I would say, well, it wasn't our idea. Really, it came from the customers. If you go back to the 1970s, we were dealing with a vendor-driven market. Vendors were delivering systems that were essentially just pieces of hardware, in some cases not even with operating systems, and leaving it up to the users and the OEMs of the industry to put together a working system with software. Now, obviously, times have changed since that period. Where we are in the 90s now is we have a customer-driven market. The education, sophistication of the customers has come to the point where we have the customer is really calling the shots. The vendor is reacting to customer demand. So from the 70s to the 90s, we've gone along a continuum which has had an increasing sophistication and demand on the part of the users for openness, and the vendors are now in a position of reacting to that customer demand. Now, the things that customers are asking for with open systems, they're asking for a lot of different things. They want flexibility. They want the flexibility to be able to choose from different vendor systems. If it's not already true today, from this point forward, you're going to be seeing almost every customer scenario would be a multi-vendor environment. Systems from multiple vendors, applications from different vendors, and they want to be able to have that flexibility, and they want to have it work together. Conversions are not something that customers want to talk about anymore. Interoperability and portability is what customers want to talk about. So they want to have all of this flexibility. They want to have the multi-vendor integration. They want to have the vendor independence. They don't want to be in a scenario where they have to depend on one vendor for technology or one vendor for applications. They want to be able to choose from what's available in the marketplace. There's a presentation going around where they have a slide that says, geez, you serve good food in your jail, but I don't want to be in jail again. That's what customers are asking for. They want to be in a situation where they have all of these things, and of course they want it at a low price. They want lower cost through this. They want to be able to make investments and know that those investments can be protected in the future, that this will help them grow and ultimately help them be more competitive as well. Now, if you take a look at this continuum in terms of how things have changed over time, let's go back and take a look at how systems have progressed starting even as early as the 1950s and moving forward to today to understand the importance of open systems. If you go back to the 1950s and you use a couple of different categories to describe what the computing environment was like, there was one vendor, there was one machine, and there was one operating system, and that was from IBM. As you moved into the 60s with the important introduction of the System 360 architecture from IBM, we've now changed to the point where we still really only had one vendor and we still really only had one operating system, but we had multiple machines, a variety of different machines from that vendor that could run that operating system. Now, if you leap forward into the 1980s, Digital really set the standard for that single system architecture, the one vendor being Digital in this case, the multiple machines being the VAX family from the desktop all the way up into the data center, and the operating system being VMS. Now also at the same time in the 80s, the late 80s, Unix started to become very popular. And the promise of Unix was that we would have from multiple vendors on multiple machines one operating system. Now that's not exactly the way it panned out, as we all know. Every version of Unix was really a different operating system to a certain degree, but that was the promise. That's why people were intrigued by the openness of Unix, so they could have that scenario. But as we move into the 1990s, we're talking about an environment in which people want to protect that investment, where they want to have the choice of different vendors' products. So we're really moving into an environment where we have multiple vendors offering multiple machines with multiple operating systems. That's the environment that customers want to have work together. So I think we've covered why customers want open systems, why they feel that they're important. Need to talk about what is an open system, and there are as many different open system definitions as there are vendors out there. There are some people that define an open system as a hot workstation. Some people think that AT&T System 5 is the definition of open system. Other people are saying Spark chips are the definition of open systems. Cheap hardware is another definition that has been offered. Portable applications, Unix, any variety of Unix, multi-vendor computing. All of these things have been offered as the definition of open systems. But that doesn't answer the question, what is an open system? Because the answer really is that all of these things can be part of an open system, but none of these things by themselves actually makes up an open system. And that's true because an open system is not really bought. They are built over time at the customer site. It's not a scenario where you can go to a catalog and say, I want vendor XYZ's open system, please ship it in 2 weeks. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about an environment that has to be built at the customer site, taking into consideration the installed environment, the directions in which they want to head, what they're trying to accomplish. It's not a single system, it's an environment that's built over time. So let's step through a few quick definitional pieces on what an open system is. I think the first thing that we need to talk about is the fact that an open system is not actually a system, it is really an application environment. And I think that that's a key point. It's an application environment that is vendor neutral and it's compliant with international standards. And the reason that an application environment is important is because that's where people's investment is over time. The applications, the people who know how to use them, the data that results from them is what our customers run their businesses on. The systems over time are depreciated. The operating systems that go along with them, all of that is somewhat transitory. The application environment, the people who know how to use it, the data that comes from it, is the real investment over time. And the environment is much, much more than just an operating system itself. It's network interfaces, it's interfaces to the data, it's the user interface, it's the interface to the system, it's a lot of things. So the application environment is really what defines an open system, not the system itself. And again, it's important that it be vendor neutral and that it be compliant with international standards. Open systems, understanding that it's an application environment, are really built on two things. One key is interoperability, and the second is portability. And the interoperability and portability apply to applications, data, the information, and again, importantly, the people that use them. So open systems, the application environment of open systems, provide interfaces for the interoperability and portability of all of these things. I think it's also important to understand that open systems, like anything else that we're trying to sell in the industry today, have to take into account the existing installed base at a customer site. Despite the promise of open systems and how good they can be and what they can mean to a customer, it's still not good enough to convince a customer to throw away everything they've bought up till now. So we're talking about open systems having to include the interoperability with the customer's installed computing environment. And that's a very, very important consideration, especially when you consider that open systems, for the most part, are not here today. They are a direction in which to be headed. And we feel that we have a very good direction for customers to head to develop the portable applications that make up open systems, but also to provide the interoperability with the existing installed environment. Now, I think that you'll probably agree that this sounds like a good definition in terms of what customers want from an open system, why they would want it, to have that multi-vendor environment, to have that flexibility, to still be able to choose from what's available on the marketplace as opposed to being locked into any one vendor or any one type of system. And this definition is also agreed to by some pretty significant standard bodies, one of those being the IEEE Posix Committee. Their definition of an open system talks about a system that implements sufficient open specifications for an application to be ported with minimal changes across a broad range of systems, to be able to interoperate with applications and tools on different systems and remote systems, and also to interact with users in a way that facilitates the portability not necessarily of the application but of the user from one system to another. So the IEEE definition fits in very cleanly with what we're talking about. In addition to the actual definition itself, open systems involve not only the specification but the process by which these specifications are arrived at. And that's very important as well, because the process has to be an unencumbered public process that can be contributed to by many vendors as opposed to controlled by one single vendor. And the IEEE definition talks about these specifications as being unencumbered public specifications maintained by an open consensus process. And that's very, very important. So you have the specification itself and also the process at which that specification is derived. And both of them are open from the standpoint that they are vendor neutral and they are compliant with international standards. So again, two of the key phrases in the definition of open systems are application portability and interoperability. Application portability refers to the ability to actually pick up an application and move it from one system to another system and have it run without modification. That's accomplished by using the same application programmer's interface across two different systems. An example of that would be Motif, being available on multiple different vendor systems so that you can have the same application run across different systems. It's important to point out that for the most part, the applications that exist today are not portable. They were not written to be portable. Again, this is the part of the definition of open systems that refers to the ability it's a direction in which to be headed. And from an application portability standpoint, the standard programming interfaces that we're supporting, that the industry standard bodies are supporting, are the ones that will allow customers to begin today writing an application which will in the future be portable across multiple different vendor systems. But that's why the second part of the definition is so important, because most applications that exist today were not written to be portable. We have to have that interoperability. And the interoperability is a different scenario. Again, let's work with two different systems, System A and System B, and we have a payroll application, for example, that's running on System A, and it needs data from a human resources database that exists on another system, System B in this case. The interoperability refers to the data access, the ability to move the data back and forth between the two systems so that the payroll application can run with the data that it's taking from the other system. So application portability is not the issue here. We're talking about the portability of data, the interoperability between the two systems. And this is what we're trying to do with most of the existing applications out there today, something digital does very well with NAS, network application support. So again, there are two key definitions, the portability, which is important today for software developers and end users who are buying applications because they can then look to people who are developing portable applications using standard interfaces, and then also look for a vendor to give them the interoperability with the existing installed environment that they have. Now, we've just stepped through a lot of definitions, why open systems might be important to you. But what are the perceptions that exist in the marketplace? Because we all know those perceptions are the reality that our customers are feeling and that you're experiencing when you're out there in the field. Well, in terms of the offerings that digital has, Unix, or Ultrix, and VMS, there are a couple of different perceptions. One is that Unix is an open system. And on the other side of the coin, VMS is a closed system. And what we like to do is explore the concept of open systems not being just an operating system, not being a system itself, but being an application environment, and what we can do to try to change these perceptions, which are in the minds of our customers reality. How does digital today deliver open systems? Well, I think the important thing, again, is to refer back to the fact that we're talking about an application environment. The application environment puts the application at the center of the model. The model we're going to use in this case is a hexagon. And again, in the middle of the hexagon will be the application. The application is surrounded by 6 doors, if you will. And these are the doors that will allow, that need to be opened to have a truly portable application, because these are the 6 interfaces that the application has to relate to be truly portable. It's not good enough just to be able to move the application from one environment to the other. It has to be able to maintain its ability to communicate. It has to be able to maintain its ability to move data around. So the 6 interfaces that surround the application are: 1, the system interface, which is an important one, but one that has been the total focus in some cases. And there are many other things that the application developer has to take into account at this point. So the first one's the system. The second one is the language that the program is written in. The third is the user interface, or the way that application would present itself to the end user. The fourth is the network, or the interoperability aspect, in terms of being able to communicate with different applications on different systems. The next one is data, to be able to exchange data with existing applications on the same system or on different systems in remote areas. And the last is the document, to be able to move documents around. And again, we're talking more than simple text. We're talking about, in this case, compound documents, text and graphics. We need to be able to develop ways in an application environment to not only create those and move those around, but also to assimilate data from various different sources and have them part of one document. So in order to have a truly portable application, we don't only have to worry about the system interface, we need to worry about the other interfaces as well. And let's take a look at the standards that relate to each of those interfaces and what digital is supplying in each of those areas. Again, looking at the hexagon and using the application as the centerpiece of the model, you can then go around the hexagon and look at each one of those standard interfaces. The first one, again, systems. We have the Posix interface and also the X-Open Portability Guide that we are complying to today on Ultrix and will be complying to in the near future on VMS. So from a systems interface perspective, we are supporting the standards that allow the application to be portable. From a languages perspective, digital is supplying a variety of different ANSI standard languages in both the Ultrix and VMS environments. So in order to write an application which is truly portable by following the language standards, we supply those again across the environments. User interface, the same thing. The way that we want to have that portability, not just of the application, but of the skills of the user when they interface with that application, we need to provide a consistent, standard-based user interface on both environments. And in this case, that would be Motif, the Motif user interface available on Ultrix and VMS. From a networking perspective, the interoperability, the ability for the application to communicate, again, with different systems on the same network or other networks, we have a variety of different standards that we support. We are supporting OSI, moving towards OSI compliance faster than any vendor in the industry. We also support TCP/IP. We support the DCE, or distributed computing environment, from OSF, and we also support the X-Open Transport Interface, the ability to have a TCP/IP network and protocol evolve into the OSI environment. We support all of those standards, and digital, in conjunction with third parties, make those available across VMS as well as the Ultrix environment. From a data perspective, we are supporting the SQL standard, the structured query language. Again, that's available as part of the operating system environment on both VAC systems and DEC systems, with VMS RDB available runtime with the operating system, and Ultrix SQL available with the Ultrix operating system as part of the base operating system. Out of the box, you get the SQL runtime environment. From a document perspective, we are supporting the ability to create, move, integrate compound documents, again, in Ultrix and in VMS, and also in the OS2 environment, with the compound document architecture, which is digital superset of the Office document architecture, which comes out of the CCITT standards body in Europe. So as you move around the hexagon, as you package the application, you can see that digital does deliver, regardless of operating system, an environment that is more standard compliant than anybody else in the industry. And again, it's important to understand all of the aspects of the hexagon and their importance to having an environment that has application portability and interoperability, and not just focus in on the system, The application, that's what drives the sale. That's what has to be the center of the model, and that fits the definition that we talked about earlier of open systems being an application environment. So we're talking about an environment that gives application portability, again, a direction in which to be headed for people who are developing applications today that want to have them be portable, to get the things that we talked about in terms of customer demands, the flexibility, the choice, the protection of investment. But we also want to achieve interoperability. And in that case, as I mentioned earlier, digital has network application support. Network application support gives us the ability from a variety of different servers, VAXs, DEC systems, OS2 systems in some cases, and even network connections into OSI networks or SNA environments where we can use an IBM 3090 for a server. So for a variety of different servers, a variety of different services to integrate existing desktop devices, which would incorporate dumb terminals, Macintosh desktops, MS-DOS systems, OS2 systems, Unix desktops, as well as VMS desktops. NAS for digital is an architecture to which we are developing products and to which our customers can implement a multi-vendor environment. It's obviously a strategy that we are pursuing in terms of providing that interoperability, which is so important to our customers, and it is also a series of deliverables, the PathWorks products to integrate DOS and OS2 and Macintosh machines into our server environment, the ability to have Unix products work with VAX servers, the ability to tie VMS desktops into a variety of different environments, the ability to communicate with IBM mainframes. All of the networking strength, the interoperability that digital provides is part of the NAS environment, and this again allows us to satisfy that requirement of customers for the multi-vendor environment, the part of the open system definition that talks about the interoperability with the existing installed base, and we do that as well or better than anybody else out there. An interesting way to look at the NAS model might be to go back to the hexagon and put in the middle of the hexagon the application and then layer in the NAS services around the hexagon, talking about the interoperability from a network perspective, the SQL data interfaces, the user interface from Motif. So the NAS services also fit very neatly into the hexagon model around the application. So if you use the hexagon model and you talk about the hexagon model as our ability to deliver an application environment that has the ability to develop portable applications and also has the ability to deliver the interoperability that people are talking about, we are showing that, in fact, an open system is not equal to Unix. It's much, much more than just an operating system. So in truth, no operating system equals an open system. In fact, what equals an open system are the industry standard interfaces as you move around that hexagon that allow you to achieve interoperability with the existing environment and to develop truly portable applications. So in reality, Unix doesn't equal an open system. No operating system equals an open system. It is the standard interfaces that we discussed that really make up an open system environment. So if you take a look at the way digital is delivering open systems, we can look at a hexagon in the Ultrix environment. You can move around the hexagon and talk about our Posix Compliance. We are the first vendor in the industry to be Posix compliant with Ultrix version 3.0. Our ANSI standard languages, which we deliver with the Ultrix environment, Motif, the user interface that we deliver, TCP/IP and OSI to give us the networking and the interoperability for the application in the Ultrix environment, SQL, again, as I mentioned, delivered in the Ultrix operating system itself, and the support of the compound document architecture in the Ultrix environment. So as you move around the hexagon, we have provided those key standard interfaces in each one of those 6 critical areas to achieve the application portability and interoperability. And we've done it in the same time as we deliver the strongest OSF-based Unix environment out there with the Ultrix OSF product that we will be delivering. Now you can also take a look at the same hexagon model in the VMS environment. And in the VMS environment, you can take that same trip around the hexagon. VMS is committed to be Posix compliant before the end of this calendar year. We are applying for XPG, or X-Open Portability Guide, branding with VMS operating system. We deliver today the ANSI standard languages, the Motif environment. The user interface is available on VMS today. Again, support of DECnet and OSI. as well as TCP/IP for the networking. Again, as I mentioned earlier, SQL is available in VMS RDB, and the support of the compound document architecture. And what we're doing here is we're taking the industry standard approach and adding that to the functionality that we've had in VMS. So we are continuing to display standards leadership and are applying that to the VMS environment. So we have customers who are demanding the Unix environment. We're going to deliver to them the most standard compliant environment. We have people who have invested a lot in VMS. They want to be able to move into the environment of open systems that have the ability to have portable applications and interoperability, and we're providing, as we move forward with the Open VMS program, the standard interfaces that would allow them to move into the open systems environment as well. So again, we're doing that on the strongest Unix platform with our Ultrix OSF product, and we're putting industry standard leaderships into the VMS product that we've had delivering compatible desktop to data center computing since 1978, and we're continuing our leadership in the standards environment. So when you're talking about open systems leadership, you can talk about digital. You can talk about the first company to put these key standard interfaces on a non-Unix-based system, and we're doing that with Open VMS. You can talk about the first company in the industry to ship a full OSF1 system, and Digital is doing that with the Advanced Development Kit, which we announced at Sun Expo in late February in Boston and also at Hanover Fair in Germany. We're delivering OSF as per our commitment, the first in the industry. You can talk about Digital's network application support. And network application support from Digital is a series of standard interfaces that provide the broadest range of interoperability across a broad range of multi-vendor systems. That's a very, very important capability in terms of achieving that one part of the definition, achieving that interoperability that people want. And NAS has given us a lot of capability to go in and solve a lot of customers' problems, and that is recognized by a lot of people in the industry. In fact, we have a quote from the Gartner Group that says, "There is no other company currently attempting to build such a complete multi-vendor networking environment as Digital is with NAS." When you talk about open systems leadership, you can also talk about our ability to implement standards. The standards that Digital has participated in the development of, things like Posix, things like OSF, things like Ethernet. Digital has participated in the specification of these standards. Digital has offered Digital developed products to the industry as standards, and they have been accepted. Motif being predominantly based on DEC Windows being an example of that. Digital has a very, very strong story to tell in the standards environment. Standards exist because of Digital, not in spite of Digital. So when you talk about open systems leadership, you can talk about Digital, and you can talk about the things that we're doing because we are pursuing a definition of open systems that is in line with what our customers want. They want that portability. They want the interoperability. It is an application environment. It is not any particular operating system. It is not any particular hardware. It's an environment built on a range of systems, a range of different operating environments, utilizing standard interfaces. And again, this has been recognized by analysts in the industry. Another quote from Mark Schulman that says, "Digital is providing a broader implementation of open systems than any other vendor." And this is not the first time that Digital has had a capability in advance of the general recognition of its value. And that's an important concept. I think if you go back to the mid-'80s, when Digital was delivering built into their products the networking capability before most people knew that they needed networking capability. Again, here as Mark Schulman is saying, we are doing the same thing with open systems, that we have risen above the hardware level or the operating system level and gone to the application environment, which is where people are making their decisions and where people want to have the solutions. They want to be based on the application environment, and that's the definition that Digital is pursuing. So just to wrap up real quickly, open systems are an application environment, and the application environment has to have interoperability with the existing install base and also provide a way to develop portable applications and also to have the data portability and the skills of the people be portable as well. We're talking about an application environment that needs to be vendor neutral and compliant with international standards, and they have to be arrived at by a process which is also vendor neutral, a public consensus-based process. The movement towards open systems, the growth of open systems in the marketplace, which is explosive. We're talking about compound annual growth rates in the range of 27% over the next several years. People want to implement open systems because they feel that they can provide them a competitive advantage. And digital's in a very good position to deliver the open systems application environment that people want. With Ultrix, we have what we feel is the most standard compliant Unix-based environment in the industry. And VMS will be the first non-Unix-based environment in the industry to implement these key standard interfaces as you move around the hexagon. And if you want to talk about interoperability, again, the inclusion of the install base at the customer site, digital today is delivering multi-vendor integration that is based on industry standard interfaces through the Network Application Support Program. So we can talk about open systems, and we can talk about it with confidence, because I think that you'll see as we move through this definition and stepping customers through what they need from open systems and working with them to understand what their needs are, they can see that digital is not only committed to open systems, but in fact we are a leader in open systems. Thank you very much.